shore, living in the islands till my last day. Keep me in your heart.
Tom McLean.
Okay. You had an experience with Peter Cole that I think you should tell me about.
I did.
What was it?
I went to Waimea Bay, and I was parking my bus on the Haleiwa side of Waimea Bay, and it was about 10 feet. It wasn't really big Waimea, but it was breaking, and you could see guys out there catching waves and stuff. So a guy walks up to me, and we start talking, and he's mostly about my bus. He likes the bus, and we started talking about Hawaii and things. And then I asked him, I said, "Have you ever surfed out here?" And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, I've surfed out here quite a bit. And he says, I've caught some really good ones out here, and I've taken my share of beatings. But he said, really, my place is Sunset Beach. He said, it's my favorite place to surf in the entire world. And he says, I live down there, so I get to go quite a bit. And then he started laying out how it sets up, and just super friendly, very knowledgeable about it. And so we talked for a little while longer, and he said, hey, I got to dig out because I'm going to go have lunch with my wife. So I said, okay, it's nice to meet you. His name was Peter. And I said, it was nice to meet you, Peter. And he goes, yeah, nice to meet you too. Good conversation. I enjoyed it. So we started walking back down the hill toward the gate of Waimea Bay, and I finished watching the surf for a while, and then I decided to dig out and go to Haleiwa. So I went over there, and then sometime later, I saw in a magazine, before I read it, I recognized this picture of this guy, and it was an article about how to paddle in big waves. And then I look at the name, and I put it together right there. I said, my God, it was Peter Cole. I'd never met him. I didn't know anything about him. He was as nice and as cool as he could be, and yeah, it's one of my favorite surfing memories, is meeting Peter like that and having no idea it was him. So I didn't get like over my skis or anything as far as, wow, this is Peter Cole. Aloha, Peter.
He was a great storyteller, and what I'm going to miss about Peter is his voice. And he and Buzzy loved each other so much, and they loved telling the story of how they both met. And they each tell two different stories of how they met. Peter said that first time he met Buzzy Trent, he and Corny were playing with their football, and Buzzy grabbed the football. So they decided they're going to have it out at the empty lot the next day. Kit Horn was going to be Buzzy's wingman. Peter's brother Corny was going to be his wingman. They get to the lot next day, and Peter goes, gosh, Corny, you sure want to do this? Look at the size of that kid. Corny says, I'm going to do it. And they start getting in on it and whacking each other. Buzzy knocks him down. Corny gets up. Buzzy knocks him down again. Corny gets up. Finally, Buzzy just hugs him and says, I don't want to do this anymore. Hugged him, and they were inseparable ever since, and they were 8 years old. Buzzy tells another story much shorter. He goes, first day I met Peter and his brother Corny, they made fun of me for wearing coveralls, so I beat them both up. That was it. Aloha, Peter, I love you, I miss you, but you're gonna always be with me in my heart, and I'm gonna always hear your voice.
I just remember being a little girl, I don't know how, maybe 4 or 3, but just him picking me up, and he's so tall, and I've never been that high before, and that's what I remember, just being higher than everybody, and it was just, that laugh and that warmth, so it was really nice. Aloha, Peter, oh, Uncle Peter, you can't go.
Beach, there's a big condo right there now. You know, like
The surf condo.
I don't know the name,
surf?
but there's like the park at Ali Beach and goes all the way to the end where they have the back.
My name is Norburn Clark, and this is my partner, Mitty Cox, and we were classmates in high school. Peter was my math teacher in high school.
Where?
Where? At Punahou. This was 1961, 61 or 62. I was Peter's worst student, I believe, and a test was going to come. Test was on the way, and he turned to me and said, "Clark, there's a big wave coming, and you're going to drown." Aloha, Peter.
I want to invite my mom up here to welcome and thank everybody to get us started. So this is Peter's wife and life partner, Sally Cole.
He already said what I was going to say. But I do want to thank you all for being here and for being Peter's friends. It's what made his life complete. It was just a happy life he had because he enjoyed knowing everybody. And that's all I really have to say is thank you. That's what he would say.
Thank you, Mom. It's been awesome to hear all the stories and receive all the cards and messages and phone calls and written pieces about my dad since his passing, and it's made it a lot easier. It's made us really just happy to have been part of his life, and so we thank all of you for that. And we're inviting a few people up to share some stories and memories and perspective on his life, and after that we'll cross the street at the crosswalk safely. I'll remind you at the end too, but if you're bringing layout, remember to cut the strings or plan for that before you paddle out so that we don't litter the ocean with string and other debris that aren't natural to be in the ocean. But let's reflect on and celebrate my dad's life for a little while here. And to start us off, I want to bring his younger brother Lucky Cole up here to share some words and memories of his special life.
I have to have this off the thing, so if I fall down, I can still keep talking. It's important to be flexible. This is a nice crowd. Hopefully the people are not using leashes. That's important. But you know, at our age, we may need leashes attached to our granddaughters and grandsons. But anyway, I just want to share with you that Peter Van Zandt Cole and his twin brother, Cornelius Cole III, were born October 12, 1930, at the start of the Depression. They were 2.5 pounds each. They were 2 months premature. This was at a time when hospitals barely had alcohol. You know, I mean, it was really early in but they were in a good hospital, children's hospital in LA, one of the more advanced ones, and their pediatrician took them from birth at 2.5 pounds, fitting in a shoebox, to where they became 6'3" pains in the ass older brothers. Okay, and I shouldn't say that. They were wonderful older brothers taking care of them. Yeah, Sally's my monitor, you know, if I can't swear. No. So anyway, you know, they were born, but you won't believe this. I mean, nobody will believe this, but their pediatrician's name was Dr. Stork. He flew in, picked them up, and took off. And then, so that next 10 years I wasn't too aware of because I wasn't born. And but my mother had a lot of miscarriages, so when I was born, she named me Lucky, that was a nickname. And or it could have been because she was watching Dunkirk, and the British were lucky to get the hell out of France. Yeah. But anyway, so then from that point on, World War II occurred. My dad went off to save the world. My mother took care of us and was working as literally Rosie the Riveter at Santa Monica Douglas Aircraft at the time. And she worked the night shift from 12 to 8. So from when I was born, or about 2 years old, they were taking care of me. Peter and Corny were dragging me along. 12 years old, they're dragging me to the beach, you know, in Santa Monica. Corny was mostly taking care of me because the girls liked to see the little kid, and Corny liked girls. You know, Corny was kind of social. Peter had braces, and he was scared to hell of girls. He was never scared of the ocean. Girls kind of terrified him early on. Sally had to overcome a lot. Anyway, so Peter now and Corny are taking this little guy along the beach, and you may see a few pictures of this little guy. You notice there's no pictures of me on a wave. I was always the unknown surfer. Peter was always the legend, and he was great. Peter was probably more of a mentor to me than even my brother Corny. Good and bad, you know. No, he was mostly good. He took me to surfing, you know, and I got in the ocean and with him when I was 2 years old and when I was 5, and then when I was 15. You know, now fast forward, they're 15, I'm 5. They're in high school, and they take up surfing. Buzzy Trent, Kid Horn, and of course the famous Bob Simmons, who designed the first surfboards with concave, double fins, balsa wood. So Simmons was a famous surfer, and he had that. If you look at the old cars, you'll see our big, long, old car, where Corny learned to drive, and I was terrified. Those are most of my memories as a youth. And then you'll see Simmons' car next to it, this kind of jalopy car. And Simmons had a crippled arm, and he was a great ping pong player. And he came to our house all the time because my mom had an open house kind of in Santa Monica. Everybody came, and all the surfers. And they'd go surfing, and of course in California, ice blows out, it's junk surf. So they'd come there, and they'd play ping pong. And my early memories are of Peter and Corny and all of his friends playing ping pong on this table. And anybody who's played ping pong knows there are dinkers and slicers, and there's slammers, right? And so Corny was a finesse dinker and slicer, and really played a lot more ping pong than Peter, because Peter was swimming in meets and things, and Peter was a slammer, and that was one of the areas where Corny was better than Peter. And as a twin, Peter never played ping pong again. Yeah. If Corny beat him at anything, it stopped. So, meanwhile, we're in this house. It's a great house. Everybody loves it. Everybody's enjoying themselves. And we have Corny, the finesse, Chouinard Art Institute student, and Peter, the swimmer going back and forth in the pool, are together at the house after a day of surfing. And we had this, this concrete area with our garage, a basketball net, and, a porch light. And Peter challenges Corny to boxing. In the 40s, boxing was very popular. Everybody did it with boxing gloves, of course. And Corny had been practicing in, watch out here. Okay, I made it. I had to step over the cord there, not trip. So Peter challenges Corny to boxing. And Corny has been at Chouinard Art Institute. He's been practicing boxing. He's finesse, remember, he's real careful. So they go in the backyard. One of my early memories, I'm like 8 maybe. And he wasn't a vicious competitor, but he was an aggressive competitor, And so they're sitting there boxing, and Corny's going, up, 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 up. Peter's going, woo, woo. And Corny's dodging every one of his blows. He's dodging every blow Peter could throw at him. Corny goes, bop, 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 bop. And once in a while he hits him in the stomach and then the head. And Peter's just getting madder and madder at his twin brother, his twin brother. And so Corny positions him to look at the light, the porch light. And Peter can't see anyway. Everybody knows Peter's blind, right? The eye chart, I could make out the E. Peter couldn't see the eye chart. That's how bad it was. So when he lost the eye, it wasn't really that big an impact on his surfing. So anyway, back to the story. So they're boxing, and so Corny gets in position, so he's looking in the light. And he goes, pop, 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 really good, connects it. And Peter's just swishing, and Corny goes inside the house. He goes inside the house, through the door, sits down in the chair, and Peter's swishing, and I'm saying, oh, Jesus. I said, this is not going to end well. So I'm looking at this, and then I follow him into the house. I follow him into the house, and Peter's hovering over the chair. Come out and fight like a man! Come out and fight like a man! And Corny said, oh, I'm done with that. So they grew up together, they competed together. Corny was a fine artist, he was finesse. Remember, he was drafting ability. If anybody saw some of his early work, he was like Daumier. I mean, he was super good. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award as an animator. So when I went to LA and I went to visit Corny, I was Corny Cole's little brother. When I'm here with surfers, I'm Peter Cole's little brother. And then pretty soon, I've aged up, and I look more and more like Peter Cole. And people keep saying, hi, Peter, how are you? And I said, oh, I'm the little brother. Anyway, so the net of it is that Peter and Corny were competitive. But they went diverse routes. And Peter was a great swimmer. Several people here swam with Peter. Too modest to say they beat him, but he lifeguarded. My main memories of Peter were after he went to Stanford. We'd only see him in the summer because there was surf in LA, sucked, okay? So he would only come down and visit us during the summer when he lifeguarded at LA City. And his thing with lifeguarding, he really focused on lifeguarding and competition in about 1952 when he missed going to the Olympics by 0.4 of a second. Oh. That was the most depressed we ever saw Peter.
Never forgot that.
Yeah, he was really, really upset him. Mo was the last cut wherever Mo is in the water polo Olympics, so she can appreciate it. It was traumatic for him, and it changed his direction. He kept swimming, but he knew that in swimming in pools, you had to make these turns. And Peter's turn, every time he was swimming with Gene Grounds, who's laughing, Peter would lose 10 yards every time he hit a turn. So pool swimming was not his forte, but in the ocean, he was hard to beat. As long as he could see the buoy. That was a critical factor. Once in a while, I'd go off course. But Peter was a great waterman, And in '52, he kind of transformed from a swimmer to primarily a surfer waterman. And graduated from Stanford, went into service for a couple of years, where Peter was a swimmer for the Two Rock Ranch Army base at Petaluma. Now, that is a base of about 12 people, but he represented them at swimming meets. So they sent him around the country going to swimming meets. And then they fired him from that one time because he didn't come back from the swimming meet, he went surfing at Santa Cruz. So, but Peter was never, surfing was his life, and competing was his life. It was almost more important to him to swim fast than it was to surf great. It was toss-up, you know. But he swam and he paddled and he dory. You know, the dory, the lifeguard boats you see in Australia now, they've replaced them here with these motorized things called water skis or something. But in those days they had this lifeguard competition. And Peter was in them from 1948 to 1968 when he left Punahou, and he no longer had summer vacation off. And so Peter came to California for the lifeguard events. And one other thing, once he got in Hawaii, he came to California to also promote Bud Brown's surf movies. So he was this lifeguard who would go around and compete in these swimming and paddling and rowing events. And he did this in the Taplin, which was a relay race, right? And there was LA City Guards, the LA County Guards. The County Guards were the enemy. The Santa Monica Guards nobody cared about because they were so slow. But the City Guards were almost competitive with the County Guards. And so Peter was a City Guard. He recruited me as a swimmer. He recruited Jim Graham as a swimmer. He recruited Dan Drown, I think, as a swimmer. And one year, we actually won the Taplin. Peter did the swim, the paddle, and the dory. He's the only guy ever in these relays to do all three events. And he was the best at all three. The amazing thing was he was the best at all three. Peter then competed individually in the Ironman. And there's a guy here, Cappy Sheely, beat him in an individual Ironman race, which was a swim out, paddle out, and dory in. And Peter was beating this young whippersnapper who was his student at Punahou, which made it even worse. He's coming in on his dory, and this guy he's lapping a guy, and the guy comes across in front of his boat. He hits the boat, and Cappy catches wave smiling. He's almost got as good a smile as Peter. He's smiling, and he goes past Peter and wins the race. Sally says he forgave him. I don't believe Peter ever forgave Cappy for losing that race. But Sally says, oh, Peter's forgiving. Yeah, sure. But he was a gentleman. And I called all these people across time and area, and I asked them, well, what about Peter? And the thing they said about him was he was a great friend. He was a caring person. He was kind, and he really did care about maintaining friendships and relationships. And he also was, in my opinion, if Greg Noll was the bull, Peter was the lion. Peter would go out and wait. And I used to say he waited in a duck blind for the biggest wave to come by, and then he reached up with his 12-foot board and shot it down. But the lion waiting for the biggest wave. And he asked people, do you see a wave? You know, and the amazing thing was somehow or other he caught the waves. You know, the amazing thing is Peter would always, he called me a wave hawk. You know, my goal was to get 8 to 10 waves an hour. You know, that's a reasonable goal. And so and Peter, when we first moved to Sunset, he said, line up with me, I'm way out here. And then I saw Jeff Hackman. And I saw Jeff Hackman get a wave. And I saw Jeff Hackman get another wave. And I saw him get another wave. And so I tracked Jeff Hackman. I didn't track Peter. So I followed him around until I got the lineup at Sunset. But Peter would wait, literally, for 6 hours. He'd be in the lineup at Sunset, way out there, for 6 hours, bobbing back and forth in the lineup. And he was durable. I mean, anything you can say about Peter, he was a peak big wave surfer in California in about 1958, surfer. Yeah, he came to Hawaii in 58. So he was a big wave surfer for I don't know how many decades. And he would ride anything, anywhere. He'd go out alone. When he was at Two Rock Ranch outside of Petaluma, he would go out and surf that was giant, windy, and he couldn't see the great white fins going by. Yeah, but nobody likes to surf alone. We're all a little bit nervous when we are out alone, you know. We're looking down. And Peter never thought he could drown if he was in the ocean. He just didn't think that was a possibility. And the only injury he suffered, he was so strong, the only injury he suffered was when he was racing Ricky for their boards. And of course he was beating Ricky, and he bumped into his board and severed his eye. So, you know, there's so many stories about Peter, I don't know where to end, except that as my mentor, surfing big waves, he got me hooked on surfing big waves, and he also scared the crap out of me when I was about 15 years old with these spots. We went by ourselves out to Vandenberg Air Force Base before it was Vandenberg Air Force Base, this side of Point Conception. Huge surf all by ourselves, nobody out. He went to Surf Beach with Kid Horn and myself, which is like a beach break on steroids, you know, and the depot there, the depot station at Surf Beach says Surf Beach. That's the railroad depot. They probably don't even have a railroad anymore. But Peter went out there on a day that was so big, I was like 15. I'm getting second waves inside. I couldn't get out that were way overhead. And he went out double overhead and just getting clobbered. And Kit Horn is coming in saying, what am I following Peter for? And then he actually had to be rescued down at another point. And Kit Horn was the top swimmer at SC. So Peter actually had to bring him in. So he was an amazing waterman. And then the culmination of that was, of course, the award at the Duke Award, which probably that award is the most important award he got, other than maybe the Surf Rider Award, and also placing high in swim meets. You know, I said he knew every time he placed in every event. I mean, he knew he did a 437.4 at this event at this pool in 1953. You know, and he did. And he went on and on. But anyway, he was a great guy. Everybody thought the one word that kept coming up was he's a gentleman. And one gentleman named Harold Dunnigan in California, lifeguard, said that in life it's important, the boat you're in life, you're going certain directions. Peter went several directions. He was an activist, he was an athlete, he was a family man, a friend, and he had all these directions he went. He said, it isn't important the directions you go, it's the weight you leave behind. Peter left a great weight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucky, for the memories. Yeah, I think we'll be going out around sunset, so bring your wetsuits. No. The next up, we're going to hear from Jim Blateau, Dr. Jim Blateau. He knew my dad from when my dad first came here. Jim, at that time, was, you know, a high school student charging Waimea, and then he ended up being roommates with my dad, Ricky, and Fred Dyke. So and you know, my whole life, he was the next door to us. He's like an uncle to me, and he, being a doctor, was really looking in on my dad when his health was getting worse, and gave us some valuable feedback, and really generous in terms of helping us spot problems and try to deal with them. So, Jim Blateau, are you around?
In 1958, Peter had just finished teaching at Jefferson High School in LA. It was a primarily all-black high school. And from that, Van Dyke enticed him to Punahou, which was a little different than Jefferson. And I was a senior at Roosevelt at the time. living kind of a catastrophic life. I had an alcoholic, violent stepdad, and we were living by Punch Bowl, by the Pake Cemetery up there. And so I had no role model. My home life was a catastrophe, and but I surfed. And this was when we would come out to sunset, and there was no lifeguard, no jet skis, no helicopters, no leashes. And one of the things Peter taught me was that you had to watch out for each other. If you're bored, you saw the boards we were riding. And if you're bored, you lost your board, which we did all the time. And it would go out in the channel to Kauai, you would go get it for your friends. There were no surf contests, nobody surfed for money. It was a different world. And nobody yelled at each other when you take off in a wave. In fact, you wanted your friend on the wave. So it was quite a different place. We slept in our cars on Kainui Road on vacant lots that sold for $2,000 for a beachfront lot on Kainui. You can imagine that. And Warren Harlow was living at Laniakea there. I don't know if Warren is there now. Vicki Heldrick, are you here somewhere?
Yes, she is. She's here.
There's Vicki. Vicki was a beautiful surf lady, and she and Moselle Angel, Jose's wife, were two of the women surfers at the time. And Vicki and I and my Pake friend Jen Y. Lee would come out. Jan Lee had an old Hillman Minx with a Ford V8 engine in it. And we'd come out in this thing and surf. So that was my escape from my home life. And over the years, I got to know Peter. I appreciated that, here I was a 16-year-old kid, and he was probably 28 at the time. And he was my first role model. And in the water, although he was competitive, we always looked after each other and we got each other's boards. Finally, I graduated from high school, and Peter knew kind of what my life was like at home, so he invited me to live with him. So I go from this chaotic, alcoholic world to a chaotic Peter Cole, Fred Van Dyke, Gene Grounds, and Ricky Grigg life. They were my stable new life. Oh God, it was a different disaster, but it was really wonderful. So basically what happened was that with those guys as guides, I decided I better do something with my life. And of course, about that time I met a girl. And she lived on the mainland. And so in 1961 I left and went to school on the mainland. And years later I came back, and by that time Peter was living at Rocky Point. And he rented me his house, his other house. And so I lived next door to him, where I've lived for 46 years now. And then we got old. And we got to the point where Peter couldn't, in surfing, if you can't stand up fast, you're dead, because you have that split second to get to your feet. And Peter got to the point where he couldn't do that, and eventually I got to that point, and we stopped surfing. And I watched him get old and sick. I got old, and I watched him die. And I really miss him. And he was my best friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Jim's been an awesome neighbor and uncle and extended family to us our whole life. Really appreciate you sharing. So my dad My dad lived a rich life in so many ways and left so many impacts. And I like Lucky's analogy of leaving a positive wake. And you know, a large amount of his time when he wasn't sitting out in the lineup waiting for waves and surfing or working, he dedicated to this community. And I want to invite Larry McElhaney up, who was alongside my dad in a lot of the battles that they had for this community, to share a little perspective on his activism and environmentalism.
Thank you, Doug. You can't believe what a privilege it is to be up here addressing this gathering. Here's my speech. I'd like to explain why I'm going to read it. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's too long to memorize. Number two, I asked my son Blake to help me write it, which he did, and he made it much more intellectual and complicated. So I'm going to have to refer to my notes here. I apologize for that. If anybody is offended by anything I say, talk to Blake. Hello, everybody. It's great to see everyone celebrating and recognizing the amazing life of Peter Cole here at Sunset Beach, his home break, and one of the most famous surf spots in the world. Thanks to the entire Cole family for allowing me to share some thoughts about our friend Peter, a kind and visionary leader who set the standard for what it means to be a surfing legend. As you know, Peter's brave exploits as a North Shore big wave pioneer are widely documented. Therefore, as an environmentalist, I'm going to focus my remarks on the 70-year relationship Peter built with this area and how his commitment, involvement, and relationships deeply affected the rest of us. Peter was a lifelong learner, family man, civil servant, tireless community advocate. His wife Sally was always by his side. Peter had a keen sense of fairness, right and wrong, and the need to fight for justice. Importantly, he was willing to stand up for the things that really mattered. I first encountered Peter's clear thinking and candor in 1963. Right out here in the lineup, I was a 17-year-old kook at the time, with the wrong board, no experience, and Peter and I got caught inside. I was out further than he was, and as the wave broke, like a kook, I bailed my board, and it either hit Peter or caused him to lose his board. Well, when I came up, Peter had some choice words for me. I won't repeat what he said, but anyway, that was my first interaction with Peter. Basically, he said, "You're not ready for it out here. You might want to go in." City council members, unscrupulous developers, and their consultants, and sometimes others, could experience similar stern rebukes from Peter. If you ever heard him testify at a city council hearing, you know what I'm talking about. Jim Plateau knows. This candor was well known, and when needed, he used it. He used his authenticity, passion, and trustworthiness to great effect, as he helped convince and inspire the powers that be in areas such as Sharks Cove, Kavila Bay, Haleiwa Beach Park, Pupukea Palmalu, and other special places along this coastline must be protected and conserved for the benefit of the public. This same ability to help others tell right from wrong was key as he emerged as a leader in the ongoing effort to ensure that recreational surfers have access to public beaches and public surf breaks in the face of the tidal wave of the global surfing industry and competition scene. Through these successes, Peter proved you can be a role model for others while passionately pursuing surfing and being a great person. As the Surfrider Foundation's Oahu chapter that he helped found noted, Peter's legacy in surfing and conservation will live on through the protected coastal and ocean areas that he fought so hard to conserve, and by those who are following in his footsteps to protect Oahu's ocean, waves, and beaches. Let's make sure that when we elevate someone as a surfing legend, that we use Peter and his legacy as the benchmark. A true commitment to give and not just take from the special North Shore community and location. Gathering here, remembering and honoring him as one of our best, we can rest assured that Peter and his family and his extended family will appreciate what we do from this day forward in exercising the privilege and obligation to take care of each other and one of the most special places on earth. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier, like, it's been really helpful to me to have so many of you share your memories and stories about my dad. And it's taken a lot of weight off our shoulders, because it doesn't really matter what I say right now. His life, his legacy, his accomplishments are remembered and cherished by so many people that I don't have to have any doubt in my mind that his life will live on forever through all of your stories and memories and the inspiration you've drawn from him. So thank you all for that. I wanted to read one of the messages that I received from a college roommate who got to know my dad because he was so supportive of my athletic career in college that he'd come to any game he could. When I was playing water polo, he'd time his work trips to the Pentagon to be able to be there so he could watch me play, and then he'd take all my friends and roommates out to dinner afterwards. And so their interactions weren't on a daily basis, but I think it speaks to what Lucky said is, you know, he was a true gentleman and people really got that, and he impacted lives. So I'll just read this. I'll always remember your dad as a wonderful human being who accomplished much in life. Big wave pioneer, collegiate swimmer, applied math career, but more importantly did so while truly enriching the lives of family, friends, and community in the best of ways. Your dad lived his life with a certain presence of mind, a calmness and integrity that naturally declined short-term gains that weren't aligned with his core identity and mission. Many see this in him, myself included, and so I can only conclude that this is what true charisma looks like. Much respect. I think in 3 sentences, you know, he really captured a lot of what my dad was all about. He accomplished so much, you know, his whatever he did, it was done really well, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and I think that's why he did so well, that he didn't get distracted, he didn't get off course. He knew what he was there to accomplish, whether it was sitting out in the lineup and surfing and waiting for that wave, that one wave. He wasn't going to sacrifice quality for quantity. And so he accomplished all these amazing things. And he did so gracefully in a way that made people enjoy watching him do it. You know, I've heard it from a lot of people, like he's he's one of the few people out at Sunset that for probably a couple decades of surfing Sunset, anytime you paddle for a wave, you had a cheering squad, you know, go Peter, go Peter. And you don't see that probably too often at all. And so I think people really enjoyed rooting for him. And he was so charismatic, you know. I think the reason that he had so many friends and fans and people that admired him and enjoyed being around him is that he truly enjoyed being around all of you, you know, and you felt that when you talked to him, that he was genuinely interested in what you had to say. He'd ask questions about you and make sure you're doing well in school. All the nieces and nephews got that. Are your grades good? And so that was, you know, he was just a great person. I just want to share, I guess, a few little memories or impacts that he's had on my life. You know, every morning for as long as I lived, and up until basically the end of his life, he started every day the same way. He might wake up at different times, at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning to go into work so that he could get back in time to surf. But the first thing he did when he woke up is he called the U.S. Weather Service, National Weather Service, and he gave the surf report for Sunset Beach. And he would say, "This is Sunset Beach, July 9th, 2022. Surf's about 6 to 8 feet out of the northwest. Winds are light and variable. Scattered clouds on the horizon." And how he did it when it was pitch black out, I'm not sure. And how he did it when he was 91 years old, well, he'd come down at the end. It was so funny. He'd come down and be like, "Oh, I told him the surf was 4 to 6, and it's like 20 foot." Like, you know, I think they have other ways of double checking. But this is Sunset Beach is how he started. Not this is Peter Cole, but like he really was. Sunset Beach was this important part of his life. And when he first came over here in 57 and in 58, surfed Sunset for the first time with Ricky, and they swam like 20 times each and barely caught any waves they could make because they didn't have the right boards. He fell in love anyway. It was just a wave that he really, truly connected with, and it's where he wanted to be. So he designed his life around that. Anytime we went to town, if we were driving back to the North Shore, be like excited to get home, right? You're like almost there. It's a long drive. You see your turnoff on Kainui Road, and he'd be like, "I think I'm gonna check Sunset." I'd be like, "Oh no!" Like I was so close to home. I was right there. But a sunset check, if you've surfed Sunset, you know, it takes a while for a set to come. And if the set comes, maybe you didn't see a wave that you really liked, it wasn't that good. If it was good, it would be a short check. If it was really, really, really good, then it wasn't a long check. But if it was marginal, it took a while. You might have to go talk to the lifeguards and see, you know, how's the surf? And then if you got out of the car to go talk to the lifeguards, you're like really in for it. And you really should have just walked home at that point. But it was this huge part of his life, you know, and so as he talks about it and reflects on being out in the ocean and looking in at this shoreline and this beauty, and I think that gave him a profound appreciation for it, and so he worked really hard and tirelessly to protect that, and so now we all get to look up at a mountainside that's undeveloped and green and beautiful, thanks in large part to efforts that he and Noll and others made. And so one thing I learned in growing up around that is that, you know, I think a message from my dad is that you can and should get involved in making a positive difference in your community and in this place, in this world. And he really did that, led by example, and he did it for others, you know. It's like he knew it mattered, and he stayed on course, and he got things done. The last thing, you know, he taught me when I was playing water polo, he'd always tell me, be confident, be aggressive. You know, he really conducted his life with this confidence and certainty that is very rare. And he went for it, you know, like whether it was at a community meeting with a council member, or it was out at Sunset or Waimea, or defending my mom from people. She told a funny story last night. He just went for it, and so he really tried to install that in me, and I can't begin to have the same confidence and aggression that he had when he was pursuing something he wanted. But he really taught me that, like, to be your best, you do have to believe in yourself, and you do have to work really hard, and aggressively pursue whatever you're after. And so he lived this rich, amazing life that impacted so many of us in such a positive way. And I think we're all really lucky to have had him in our life. And all of your stories and everything you've shared made this easier for us to process, and to process the loss of happiness and gratitude. So thank you all for all of that, for being a part of that. Thank you so much. And my brother, Peter.
Yeah, it was hard to come after Doug. That was amazing. Here, I'll try to be fast. I just wanted to say that, you know, my dad died last February from heart failure, and heart failure's, it's uncomfortable to go through, but he was just so charming and pleasurable to be around and funny right to the end, as you know him. So it was so great to be there and be able to help him because we're nearby. And he would always say, "Oh, I hate to be a burden." And I would have to explain to him, "You've given me the best life and the best place. You know, I've been surrounded by the most amazing people. And it's all because of you. And this is the greatest privilege, and I feel so fortunate." And I think he appreciated that. But I really felt that way. It was special. Any time with him felt good. And you can see by the amazing people that we have here that you know, the caliber of this crowd is phenomenal. And I think of his life as a joyous thing. I think of this occasion as joyous. And he was a happy man when he died. He died right at home, and yeah, he just didn't want it to end. You know, he wanted to keep going. He was talking about swimming in the summer when the hospice or palliative care doctor was trying to reach the subject of, you know, what are your plans? I think thinking of life ending, and he was like, "Well, I'm looking forward to swimming. And, I can't walk so well to the water, but Peter helps me, and you know, and he's great in the water." So he had that plan. And she kept pushing it, and he was like, "Well, I want to live to be 100. That's a good round number." You know, just cracking everybody up. And then when she was like, kind of like, in a very polite way, you know, talking about, you know, it became clear what she meant. And he was like, "I'm having too much fun here. I'm having too much fun with these guys." So it was really sweet that he just, to know a guy that had that much joy in his life and made the decisions that led to this happiness. And I just wanted to say that basically that contentment and joy I see as a result of that living life with integrity, confidence, which he had no shortage of, and clarity about what mattered to him, what was important. There was a lot of stuff that didn't matter at all to him, and he kept it simple. No leash, you know, that's his philosophy in surfing. He knew what he liked, and that's what he stuck to that at Sunset. So one time when I was helping him, you know, he had a hard time getting up the stairs. At times he wasn't, well, he didn't have a hard time. He was pretty good at it. He's a strong guy. But he'd get this off-balance thing. For a few years, he had this thing, and we didn't know when it would hit. And he was less steady on his legs towards the end. So it felt really important to us to spot him, kind of to be with him, in case something happened. That hit on the stairs, you know, their house, it's a 2-story redwood house, if you've seen it, glass windows right by it. And I remember once walking behind him, walking with him, and him stopping on the landing, and he looked out the window, and my 2 kids were playing in the yard, which they were doing a lot at that point. You know, they were really agreeable little guys. You know, it was nice not to be able to worry about them, and we could just help and do whatever. They can have fun wherever they are. And he looked out there and he said, "They're such great kids. That Julian is a good brother to Eva." And it just sticks out to me because I valued his opinion so much in terms of people. I knew the people that he was close to, his friends who were here, what great people they are, and that he could see those qualities in my son. And qualities that my son shares with him, I see him in him and in my daughter. And I think it's just so special that that we all experience that appreciation and that he experienced it, seeing his legacy continue. And he was a proud father. Like my brother Douglas and my brother Kaina, he just thought so highly of. And like Kaina is this phenomenal waterman. There's stories of him going out 100 feet and just hanging out waiting for fish. The love he has for the ocean. My dad was never the fisherman. The guy is. I don't think he ever caught a fish. But he appreciated that bond that they shared. And then with my brother Douglas, like he talked about water polo. He loved watching Douglas play water polo. Douglas was the captain of the UCSD water polo team. And it was just so great to see my dad so happy when he was doing well, or just see him show up for games and everywhere. And that seeing the competitive legacy of my dad, the waterman legacy continue, water sports competition legacy continue with Dyke. That was a beautiful thing. And then Douglas went on to be the North Shore Community Land Trust. So he really took the torch from guys like Larry and my dad and Blake, with Blake's helpful guidance. Doug took on this role of protecting these places in a really effective way. Sometimes maybe more effective than my dad, because he's a little more graceful in the way he deals with people. Different. I don't want to diminish my dad's value, because it was powerful, for sure. And people were scared of having to deal with that guy, probably, if they were on the other side trying to make a buck, off of this beautiful place he wasn't about to give up. For me, I always was aware of his love and support, and it's neat seeing the three of us sharing these interests that he had. And he actually majored in art at Stanford, even though he went into math, and he did study math also. But he was at every single art show I had, whether it was in San Francisco, on the Maui. He loved going to them. And even when I was teaching, like at the Honolulu Museum of Art, over at Kroc Center, wherever it was just my students beginning artwork. It wasn't like anything fancy, but there'd be a show at the end of this I don't know what it would be, a semester. And he was there, and he was talking to him, and he loved it because he had been a teacher. I meet students of his all the time who loved him as a teacher. So the pride he felt in seeing me find meaning in my life, doing things that he cared about, that was really satisfying. The last thing I want to say is just, that's about it almost, sorry. Basically, I miss his presence, and it's not like, it's different, he's not here, but as I look at all of you, I feel, and I see my family, he's here with us, he continues, and I feel that love right now, and it's just, I'm not sad at all this day. I just feel really fortunate that my dad lived such a great life, that he would be loved by all of you enough to come in on your Saturday, and thank you so much for being here.
So we're getting close to our paddle out time, but we have one more of my dad's close friends from all those years out in the water wants to share a few words. So another living legend here. My dad was enduring. We talked about that. He surfed Sunset Waimea until he was 70. Sunset until he was 75. And in the last Eddie Aikau contest, Clyde Aikau was out there charging in his mid-70s, I think. And my dad was like, well, Clyde lasted longer than I did. So Clyde wants to share a few words, and come on up, Clyde.
Tell us, what does it mean to you when you surf the bay, Waimea Bay?
Well, you know, first of all, I want to make acknowledgement to people who was Eddie's hero and my hero. And they're right here on this stage right now. Peter Cole. We used to go down to the Shell in the 60s, and we used to watch Buck Brown's big wave movies. And
No, I thought you needed to come.
okay, two young Hawaiians, Eddie Aikau and myself, Clyde Aikau. Waikiki Shell in the mid-60s, going on to 66, 67, watching surfing movies of big waves, and who do we see out there? We see all of the great pioneer surfers, Ricky Grigg, Buzzy Trent. It goes on and on and on. And the inspiration to Eddie and myself came from Peter Cole and another Hawaiian surfer, Kaio, Kealoha Kaio. These two guys are the two guys that inspired Eddie and myself to ride big waves. We rode Sunset for like 10 years, mid-60s all the way to early 70s. Sunset every day with Sally walking down the beach with Peter. And Peter was always kind of like a take your time guy, you know. And me and Eddie used to always wait for Peter and Sally to walk down. Then we'd all paddle out and ride Sunset all day long. And yes, Peter would always wait for the big one, and we'd make sure that Peter would be okay dropping down no matter what. But I just wanted to say that Peter was always nice to my brother and me and my whole family. And we always appreciated that because, you know, trying to be part of the big wave crew in the early days wasn't the easiest thing. Either you was in or you was out. And Peter was instrumental in bringing Eddie and me into the world of big wave riding with everybody else. But, you know, in life, we're all going to reach that day when it's time for us to leave. But I think what is really important that you can leave something that can inspire people, and you can inspire them to be a better person, a better athlete. I think that is what really, really matters to Eddie and my family, that we can leave when it's time for us, and to leave this world a little better place. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but a little improvement is always great. Thank you, Peter, for all the ways we rode together. Thank you to the Cole family. Much mahalo. Aloha.
So, it's my oldest brother, Ka'aina. My brother just talked about one of the best divers I'll ever meet.
Lots to say about my dad. Just so many memories. Born and raised by the ocean. And they tell me that I used to crawl to the water. And they'd be looking for me. And I'd be in a short break. And they'd be, where's Ka'aina? Looking all over. He's in that short break. And couldn't even walk. But yeah, a lot of emotion. Thank you for coming. All family.
Thank you so much, Ken. My dad's stepdaughter, Kaulana, wants to share anything.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to honor my dad's life. My Hawaiian mother met Peter Cole when I was 4 months old, and she married him when I was 6 months old. So Peter was really my dad from the time I was a baby. He fed me, he changed me, he taught me how to swim. When I was 6 months old, I couldn't barely walk. I could go into the water and come up and breathe, and I was never afraid. And if I was, he'd come with me. Really big Ehukai was a little scary at 6 feet, and he'd come. And, he picked me up every Friday after school at my grandmother's and fought with my Hawaiian grandmother, a big 5'10", 250-pound grandmother, and everybody was afraid of her, but not Peter. And they'd argue every week. It's your fault you keep her in the water so much that she has all these ear infections. And he'd say back, it's your fault because you don't feed her vegetables. I was just this little kid watching this go on every time I got dropped off or picked up. And he was always there for me. He gave me away when I got married. He inspired me to be a good student and an excellent athlete. And I realize today that really he's why I never give up, no matter what. His activism is just everything. I realize how much of me is from Peter. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm lucky and I'm Maryland. I love you so much.
Thank you all so much for sharing. And well, we're going to wrap this up. Please continue to share stories throughout the rest of the day, throughout the rest of your lives, about each other and about this awesome place and the experiences that it affords all of us. To give my dad a final send-off to the next chapter of his life, we're going to paddle out to his beloved Sunset Beach and spread his ashes so that he can be in his favorite place in the world for the rest of eternity. You'll see the Banana Paoa sailing canoe just offshore, and we'll gather in that area and send my dad off. So, thank you all for being here. Oh, remember, with the lei, cut the strings, don't litter the ocean, just flowers, biodegradables in the ocean. So please plan for that. There's flowers if you need flowers, and you want to bring some out to throw in the water. And just thank you all so much for being here today. We really, really appreciate it.
clouds are low. Can't see the mountains, feel the wind is moving slow. The stage before a breeze begins, it's time for rain. Time to feed the plants and trees, the sky will cry. Her tears will bring life to the sea. Nature seems full of dreams unending. A native man cups his hands and drinks. Morning comes, the sun awakens from the sea, the morning light touches also quietly. It's time for day, time to rise and lift your eyes and look around at nature's gift beneath the sky.